This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
The Indiana Pacers pull out a victory against the New Orleans Pelicans, 114-110 behind the point god himself, Tyrese Haliburton, 34 points, 13 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, 9 of 18 from three-point land. Facci, this was not a pretty game by any stretch of the mean, but the Pacers have won 2 games in a row now to start their 4-game homestand. So doing exactly what they needed to do despite, the ups and downs of how they played in this game.
The pep's a little bit back in the step. I'm going to be honest. I'm having fun again. I am. I'm having a little bit of fun. These aren't great wins. The schedule has been giving for the Pacers. They're playing teams that don't have a lot of aspirations right now, teams that are banged up. But at the same point, Indiana's taking advantage of it. That's all you could ask. But I think what's more valuable than a win at this point is Tyrese getting his swagger back. And it feels like over the last 2 games, in specific, the third quarter of last game and this game against New Orleans, this looks like a man that is having fun again and is translating to being a really good basketball player.
No, I mean, it's great to see. I mean, the Pacers really needed him to be a star. And I would encourage every single person that if you have not listened to his post-game press conference, that you go do that on YouTube because it was just such an authentic answer from Tyrese. You know, I was thinking about asking him a question, but like he talked for 10 minutes at one point. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. This is a really good moment here. I don't want to kill it with asking another question about something else. I'm like, it was just a really good response to kind of hear him admit, like, he's been in his head. And that's kind of what we thought it was. We thought it was more mental than anything. And so, yeah, he might have some aches and pains here and there, like whatever, but like it's not that he's injured because he's not been on the injury report. And I don't think the Pacers would be throwing him out there every game if he was seriously hurt. So, and they have to actually report that stuff if it is true. So you can't just like hide that kind of stuff and keep it secretive and whatnot. So if it's nicks and bruises, you can do that. But like in terms of like injuries, you have to report them. It's part of the rules, part of the protocol. So I thought that it was great to see just the way that he was able to kind of express himself a little bit and kind of talk about the mental hurdles he's gone through. And the big thing he was saying is like, I just got to realize like it's just basketball. I just got to get through it. And sometimes that's what it is. And, people in my comment section already when I posted his stat line with a picture, like they're like, we said this after the Knicks game, he's terrible, whatever. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to always have a negative comment, but I think after tonight's game, you can officially say that the point guard is back.
Yeah, and you got to build them up also. Like, don't just try and discount it and say this is a hurt New Orleans team or that's a bad Washington team. It's like it's important for him to see the ball go in the hoop and start having that joy for the game again. He talked about it in the post game press conference. There was a time when he was as down on himself as he was that playing basketball felt kind of like a job, and that's not when players are at their best. You don't want them to feel like they're kind of forced to go to work. It's like, hey, they're getting paid to do what they love. And when that translates on the court, and it didn't look like he was having a lot of fun, now it does. A night like tonight is like the ultimate, like he's probably, been praying for this, been asking for this, been seeking this, been dreaming about it. However you want to put it, Tyrese has been looking for a night like tonight. 9 3-pointers. He was huge down the stretch, whether it was hitting threes, whether it was an incredible alley-oop to Mathurin, which I'm sure we'll get into more later. The man made winning plays, and no way the Pacers win this game without Tyrese being as in the zone as he was tonight.
I mean, I think that the 13 assists are almost as important, right,
Almost
as
goes
the
unnoticed.
34 points.
There's 2 turnovers too. Like he did it all tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see. And I mean, I'm pretty sure you saw there too. I believe it was the second quarter we saw him start to skip a little bit.
Yep, loved it. Been waiting for it.
Yeah, and it was kind of like the skip was almost like a kiss of death in the second quarter because I'm pretty sure shortly after that, the Pelicans went on, I believe it was a 19-4 run.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, the closing of quarters was just terrible, right?
The
And
first
I
half was
think
horrific.
it was 13-2 in the first quarter and then 19-4 in the second quarter. So that's a 32-6 differential in the final 4 minutes of, both the first and the second quarter. And it's just like, that's a 26-point swing. And it's like, that's a lot. And that's how much the Pacers were up. Like, you felt really good about how this team was playing. You're looking at the scoreboard. It's like 55 to 38 or something like that. And you're like, man, how are they doing this? Like, this is great to see. And then all of a sudden they just slowly lose it away in a matter of moments. And it was just a lot of, disconnected play. But I asked Carlisle about it. You were watching the press conference live. Do you remember what he said exactly?
I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember when I heard your voice on there, I was like, "Hey, that's Alex. There we go. That's cool." But no, I can't remember his exact words.
I've heard so much since then. I haven't had time to go back and transcribe what he said, but from what I remember, he said we took some bad shots, and I think I would totally agree with that. I think it's fair to say, because I mean, I was just curious. Like, do you think it was bad shots or like their defense picking up and then them getting on an offensive run? Because I mean, it's a game of runs. We know
It is.
that. But I thought there was a lot of dumb shots. I thought Tyrese had a couple of heat checks there, which I was fine with. But like, certain plays like that were just bad. Whatever. I'm not gonna crap on the team for the first half closing of the quarters, but I do think that it needs to be addressed because you can't do that and expect to win a bunch of games when you give up big leads like that. I love the resiliency that they had to fight back. That fourth quarter, it felt like they were just trading leads back and forth. And, Turner was, I loved Turner's energy when he got super upset that someone didn't, help him on the weak side. And then, of course, he scores 6 points in a row and got an and one. So I think it was 7. So it was
Seven
just,
scores.
it was great to see him have that moment. But, it just, when you're in these games like this and you see the way this team's been playing all year, like you're always thinking the worst. So it was just good to kind of see them stay connected and figure this one out.
Yeah, no, totally. To start with what you mentioned about the first half. Yeah, it was crazy. Look, there's so many different times Indiana could run away with this game, and always, no matter how bad things got, like how large that lead grew for the Pacers, New Orleans always found a way to keep it within 2 to 4 points by the end of each quarter. So they were always in the game. It was back and forth. But you mentioned about that fourth quarter. Indiana started off 1 of 8 in the fourth. New Orleans actually ends up taking the lead 91-89. And then it was Turner who you mentioned went for 7 straight points. But what I loved about Turner is even on TV, you could hear him calling for the ball like time after time, being like very aggressive and Tyrese feeding him and Turner making the defense pay. That was an awesome type of Myles Turner that we love to see, the Turner that we want to see more. And you want to tip your hat because sometimes you never know what players are going through, behind closed doors. Because we didn't know that he almost didn't play this game. Carlisle was talking about it in the post game press conference that like, hey, Myles almost didn't suit up. He was banged up after the game against Washington, and a night like tonight, it's like the Pacers needed Turner. So it's like they're so thin on bodies that guys are playing hurt right now. Guys are playing through some serious mental stuff that they're going through. They're just battling, but they're just trying to do everything they can to take these steps forward. And I think that's what we're seeing the Pacers taking those steps right now. No matter who's in front of them, they're getting in control little by little. They're also 6-2 at home right now. Things could be a lot worse. This team, little by little, I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think Turner was on the injury report before the game started, and Carlisle said he would be a game time decision and ruled Johnny Murphy out in pregame media sessions. So if you keep up with that stuff, you might see it. But if you're just kind of like busy at work and then just pull the TV up and you're like, oh man, I didn't realize Turner wasn't going to play. Like, I get it. It's one of those things where Turner has now had 2 different times where he's been listed as questionable with the calf injury. Missed the back-to-back against Toronto, right? Second night of a back-to-back after he had a really nice game. I believe it was against Miami. Yeah, Miami last Sunday. So had a really good game against Miami, missed the game against Toronto. And, Myles was pretty confident in his post-game press conference. He said that he feels like he can help this team win on both sides of the floor, which he wasn't wrong. In this game, he was at team best, plus 21. And he was battling foul trouble early on. The team challenged one to try to keep him from getting his third foul, I believe it was. Ended up getting his third foul. Might have been his second at that point. I can't remember, but he got his third foul. There's just kind of put the team in a bind a little bit because I feel like when he was out there, the team was much, much better. We didn't get the same, Shaquille O'Neal version of Moses
No,
Brown this game. I know you were hoping for it probably.
I was.
But we didn't see that version of him. He did have a few nice moments, but you really needed Myles to be out there to play the 5 in this game. And it wasn't even that the fact that the Washington bigs were, or not Washington, the Pelicans bigs were great, right? Daniel Tice was a minus 30 in this game in 17 minutes,
Crazy.
Facci.
That's
But on the
nuts.
other side, Missy, their rookie, he was 7 of 11 off the bench, 31 minutes played, and he was a plus 26. So him and Elfrid Payton absolutely obliterated Indiana's pick and roll coverage, and Elfrid Payton had a career high 21 assists in this game. So I think the first 20 assist game we've had this season goes to a guy that was on the Mad Ants last year. So, I mean, a lot of Pacer fans were probably happy for him, even though they, were not happy that he was doing it against them. They lose the game, but you're happy for Elfrid Payton to have that moment. But yeah, I go back to just how important Myles is. And like when he is playing his best, like this team is better. And we've talked about that on this podcast the last couple of weeks. Like when he has good games, they usually win. So that's where it gets kind of interesting when people were saying when they were going through this struggle that, oh, I think Turner's got to go. I don't think Turner's a long-term answer here. They got to trade Turner. It's been Turner's fault. I'm like, we're blaming all this on Turner. I know he wasn't playing great, but like I just thought it was a little bit premature to put all of it on Turner, even though I was a little bit frustrated with how he was playing too. But I think since that Miami game, I feel like we've seen a better version of him. Um, and he's been really helpful, even if he's not been the most impactful in the stat sheet.
No, I think this is great. This is what Indiana needs. Like I feel like at times, look, yeah, every now and then you're going to need a Turner 20-point game or so, but like if he can consistently be a good rim protector and rebounder, this team's going to go places. And tonight, 9 rebounds. That's something now that in 5 straight games he's had 8 or more rebounds. I think for Turner that's a great stretch. I looked at it. That's not something that he did last year. So you're talking about 9 boards against New Orleans, 9 boards against Washington. 8 against Milwaukee, 9 against Houston, 9 against Miami. Like that's a very consistent near double double type of Turner, and I think the scoring's been pretty solid at times. Like we said, 17 points tonight, an efficient 7 of 11. If Turner doesn't play this game, the Pacers absolutely do not win this game. I don't even know who you'd slide in there. Would Moses Brown have gotten the start? Do you switch things up a little bit? Like you obviously can't go back to Enrique Freeman starting. I just feel like the Pacers would have been way, way too thin in this game. Turner was a big difference maker for the Pacers.
No, they needed him, and that's why Rick Carlisle had to play him when he got in foul trouble. Because if you pull him out of the game, I mean, Toppin has really struggled, in my opinion.
Yep.
Just getting his footing. I think a lot of it has to do with the personnel that's out there right now. I think that the best times we saw Toppin was when he was out there with Haliburton in this game. There's so many different weird combinations that we saw that it just like there's guys not playing great. Like Carlisle mentioned that Mathurin did not have a good game.
No.
He was a -12, I think, in the game. But
Mhm.
I will say this, like even when he's not scoring, and even if the defense is kind of up and down, you have to appreciate the fact that he's been so effective on the glass, right? I know you mentioned that I believe you mentioned that he had 9 rebounds earlier, but
He did.
if you didn't, almost another double-digit rebounding game from Benedict Mathurin. And there's times where you just see him aggressively going after the ball, like soaring in the air to get it. And then Carlisle did mention that he had probably the biggest highlight of the game, the alley-oop pass from Tyrese Haliburton. So, we've seen 2 games back to back now where Mathurin's kind of showcasing some of his athleticism here at the end of fourth quarter. So, I don't know exactly what's going on with him in terms of just like the shooting numbers, but I think, hey, that's just how it goes sometimes. Halliburton's playing great now. All of a sudden, Mathurin's not playing as great. Not blaming him for anything. I'm just saying, like, not playing like he was a couple of weeks ago. But, overall, I think that he's making progress, and teams are probably starting to figure some things out that he's doing tendency-wise and trying to take that away from him. But, you know, everybody's got to be fed at some point, and right now it's Halliburton's turn to eat. And I think it's okay for Mathurin to kind of take a back seat and let Haliburton eat, but still impact the game with hustle, rebounding, and defense against some of these other wings that are, on the other team that they're playing against.
I think Mathurin, first, the good, that alley-oop to me was like the highlight of the season so far. There's been some clutch shots, so you can make an argument. That alley-oop was incredible.
What was the call like on the TV? I'm curious.
I just can't remember right now. It's been like a couple hours. Honestly,
Come on, Facci. If it's the moment of the season, you got to remember it.
I started cheering in it. It's been 2 hours since the game ended. I just remember cheering because it was like that to me felt like Showtime Pacer basketball. Like I just remember Quinn just going nuts. I couldn't hear anything after that. But literally, it was like Haliburton with that pass, and for it to be in the moment, like a clutch moment like that, an alley-oop, him and Mathurin, which I feel like, you're not seeing a lot of alley-oops out of. that to me was like, I'm having fun again. Just like I said earlier, hey, the Pacers, like at their once they reach their peak, their height, this team can be really good. They can, but we just got to get there. And these type of battles right now that they're overcoming, they're valuable. And I think that we're testing this team right now when they're limited on guys and they can't make the excuses. And it is a back to back. They did lose the previous two other back to backs on the season. It's like it's easy to make excuses and come up with losses, but you heard in the post game whether it was Turner, Haliburton, everyone's like, it's tough to win in the NBA. It is just flat out hard. No matter who you're playing, no matter who's out, there are talented players out there. And I don't care if it's an ugly win or a pretty win, it's a win nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, think about it this way too. Like the Pacers are so hobbled at this point, right? They're starting a guy on a two-way contract.
Who's playing well.
He's playing great. I mean, he had 4 clutch threes in this game tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And you're asking him to guard guys like CJ McCollum.
Yep.
So, CJ McCollum, he got going there, I think, a little bit in the third quarter. I don't really feel like he was as dominant in the fourth, but still, like, Quinton Jackson definitely had some slip ups there defensively. Like, you cannot give him any space. And I mean, even there was times where he was maybe giving him not that much space, but just a tiny bit. And he would just, he's a sniper. That's what he does from outside. I mean, CJ McCollum was a great player. And it
Oh
was
yeah.
his first game back from injury. So, he's trying to kind of get himself reacclimated with everything. And, it just takes some time. But, like, you hold Trey Murphy to 2 of 11 from 3-point shooting after he got off to a really hot start there in the first half. So they made some really good adjustments. It was just the Elfrid Payton, Yves Missy pick and roll that was dominating Indiana. And they really had no answers for it, which was kind of leaving opportunities for guys to get open whenever Indiana tried to focus in so much on that. I mean, I know at the end of the game, they put Pascal Siakam on Elfrid Payton, because they knew, like, you got to put your best defender out there in the game on him because he's just seeing everything. And I think, he had one good possession before that where he defended well and Peyton was short on the shots. So you're like, okay, we got to trust him again. Got to go to that. But Quentin Jackson, I mean, this guy is just all energy. And I had the opportunity to talk to the Pacers chaplain down there, Coach Mo, and he has different chapel services with the guys pregame, and they don't really like force anybody to go to it. It's kind of like a voluntary thing. And he told me that Quentin Jackson's been coming voluntarily. And it's just really cool to kind of see his growth and, his faith rising a little bit. And so I know Halliburton had a lot of praise for him and just talked about how good of a dude he was in the post game. So I just think it's pretty neat that, Quentin Jackson is really taking this opportunity and really strived with it. I mean, Myles Turner was high on his praise too, because you need guys like Quentin Jackson that bring that kind of energy in the lineup. They know their role. They know they're not supposed to be these offensive gurus, but they're going to be dirty dogs out there. They're going to hustle, go after the boards, play physical, play with force. And I mean, he almost had the highlight of the game when he ended Eve Missy's life with that dunk that he ended up getting blocked. I mean, got to give Missy a lot of credit for that block. It was a sick block, but if Quentin Jackson would have thrown that down, I think you would have been putting that one up a little bit higher than that Mathurin alley-oop.
Maybe, but just shout out to Quinton Jackson. He's also coming off of a game where he went scoreless against the Wizards. It's always how do you respond in those type of games. Carlisle said after the game, those 4 threes that Quinton Jackson hit in this game, those were a big difference maker, and great to see. But also he did it on both ends, like you mentioned. There was one sequence where he drew an offensive foul and then hit a three on the next play, and it's like that's the type of energy and boost that Indiana needs. He plays a season high 32 minutes. So clearly they trust him now. And it's a situation that we always have these questions. Well, what happens when players get healthy now? Like Quentin Jackson feels like a guy that you kind of have to keep in the rotation. As of now, we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's a lot of the season to play, but I think this was the type of night where, as consistent as Pascal had been all year, it's a quiet game from him offensively. He had the 7 boards, he had the 7 assists, but just 14 points. Only 2 of them came in the second half. Like you talked about earlier, of Mathurin is carrying this team at times. Now it's like Halliburton starting to shoulder the load a little bit. And the last 2 games, it's great to see they're taking turns. I think that it's very important. Touching on some of the struggles that you mentioned before about for Mathurin. 17 of 50 from the field in his last few games,
Mm.
after he had been shooting over 50% from the field for the season. So, he's the kind of guy that is going to be all right. He's going to continue to get to the free throw line. He got there, 4 free throw attempts the last few games. He'd been at 8 and 7. So it's like he's still going to continue to get to the line. He's rebounding. He had 3 assists. He's impacting the game in more ways than just scoring. But once he gets it going and Halliburton has it going on the same time, Turner, is there as a third, dare I say, even fourth option because Siakam's going to be in that mix for the top three. This Pacers team has potential, but this homestand, completing it is so vital. I don't want to overreact to the importance of this 4 game homestand, but to get back to 500 here and get a couple guys back, to me, this feels like one of the most pivotal points of the first half of the season, I would say.
Well, it's just the first quarter because by the end of the homestand, you're pretty much right at the 25% mark finish, right? And it is important, right? These are teams that, Miles kind of alluded to this, like he didn't want to like call them out or anything, but these are like lottery level teams
Yeah.
that the Pacers struggled to beat last year. And these were the games they would lose because I think they kind of just felt like they should win them so they didn't have to try as hard. But it's like you mentioned it earlier, like everybody in the league is good, whether you're tanking or not, right? Like there's a reason why 450 players are only in the league out of everybody in the world. So, and there's a lot of international players too. So I just thought it was a great effort overall from this team. Siakam, yeah, it wasn't a great game in terms of statistical wise, but like he really had an impact early on. It forced New Orleans to play a little bit bigger. They're trying to put Javonte Green on him or Trey Murphy the third, and he was just obliterating every mismatch down low in the post. So they had to go to Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who people probably don't remember him much, but he was with OKC for a while before he came to the Pelicans, and I might have had another stop somewhere else. But um, he's a bigger guy, 6'7", 6'8", so they just needed more size out there with all their injuries, and so that's why Missy had to come into the game a little bit earlier too. So he was just abusing them down low, and it forced New Orleans to play differently, which then probably opened up more shots for a guy like Quinton Jackson. Because if you look, Quinton Jackson was wide open. And I think that one thing we're not really looking at is just how much that person sagging off was taken away from Pascal getting any looks down low, because the Pacers tried to run some plays for Pascal down low, but they were like swarming him, right? Which is what I would do too because he was playing so well. But other guys have to step up and make shots, and Quinton Jackson did that tonight. Tyrese did that tonight. Myles clearly did that tonight, and so it was good to see that. But one thing I will say negatively,
Yeah.
the play of Jarus Walker.
I have it pulled up right now. I got all the Jarus Walker stats in front of me. We're on the same page here. So
Yeah.
let it rip.
Since you got the stats pulled up, I mean, just kind of display, I guess, or set it up for everybody to kind of understand like what is going on with him, because it's been rough when he's been out there.
So over his last 4 games, he's 4 of 18 from the field. It doesn't get any better because the previous games before that, he was 2 of 7 in each of them. So you're talking about being eight of 32. So over his last 6 games, 7 games actually, it's not good. It's not good at all. And I just feel like he's at times, kind of gambled a little bit. Defensively has been in more of a minus each of the last few games. Some of the turnovers over that span. I mean, if we go back to Miami Heat, there was a 7 turnover game, 3 turnover game against Houston, a 4 turnover game. I just feel that he's been a little bit sloppy with the ball, a little bit kind of, I don't want to say regressing by any means, but that 3-point shot that looked so good in the beginning of the year has definitely been struggling a little bit lately. And I think that Jarus Walker is that type of guy where he's been consistently playing 20 plus minutes. This is great experience for him, but you gotta maximize these opportunities. Because once guys like Aaron Nesmith come back, and Andrew Nemhard and Ben Shepherd, it's like it's not going to get easier for playing time. Playing time is actually definitely not going to be something that's guaranteed. And I think that this is an unfortunate stretch by Jarus Walker where the Pacers really kind of are counting on him. And unfortunately, he's not coming through right now.
No, and I mean, you didn't bring it up, but Quinton Jackson will probably get playing time over him at this point. Quinton Jackson's proven.
Deserves it. Absolutely deserves it right now. I don't think there's one person out of 10 that could tell you that, Quinton Jackson hasn't outperformed Jarus Walker over this past, I would say, 2 weeks or so.
And I would say the same thing for Johnny Furphy. I think Johnny Furphy, when he's played, has been more impactful than Jarus Walker, and that's just part of it with Jarus. He's got to grow from this. And I was sitting next to Tony East at the game tonight in our media section, and it was funny because he was like, Jarus looks like he's afraid to hit somebody when he throws the ball, right? Because it's like he just throws it so like soft and like whatever. And I said, well, there's another word for that. It's called indecisive. And he
Yeah.
was like, I know. And so it was just kind of funny because like he was giving an analogy, but I was basically saying like, yeah, he's just very indecisive and he's almost like overthinking everything out there. Like he's just having a really hard time processing what he wants to do with the basketball. And I don't know if it's like fear of being pulled out or fear of messing up, but he's not playing freely. And we saw him have like a great game against the Magic. What was it, like 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, that's a while
So
ago at this point.
pretty much
Seven
since
to
that
seven.
Magic game, he's not been good. He
No.
he's literally playing because they need him to play. But if they had everybody healthy, like you said, he's not playing. There's no doubt in my mind that Carlisle is pulling him from the rotation. And I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that because he is a lottery pick from last year, but I mean, he's got to earn it, and he has not played well. He's had some really sloppy turnovers with his passing. Defensively, I think that the one that Turner got super upset about when I forget it was Missy or somebody got a wide open dunk when Turner was helping out on a pick and roll coverage. That was Jarus Walker that just completely abandoned the rim and just went out to the 3-point line to guard somebody. And it's just like, and it wasn't like Turner was calling him out. Turner didn't say anybody like who it was, but if you go back and watch the play, I'm pretty sure it was Walker that just got out of the way. So, it's growing pains. It's not easy. Carlisle mentioned that too yesterday, before and after the game. Like it's not easy when you have a bunch of young guys that are trying to grow. But for me, it's like Jarus Walker. You mentioned the stat wise, it's been pretty ugly.
It really has. I mean, 5 of 21 from three over the last handful of games. Let's see, it's one, yeah, the last 6 games. So it's the shot's not falling. The indecisiveness is definitely there. I just feel that he looks very much like a rookie, like a deer in headlights at times. I know sometimes that's a tough statement to really put out there, but he looks like the guy that wouldn't be playing 25 minutes on any other team that's going for a playoff spot right now. I feel like he needs to be more in like a development type of role where he could be able to play through these mistakes. And right now, he's only able to play through these mistakes due to the amount of injuries that Indiana is going through. But nonetheless, I think that they're managing to win these games. Johnny Furphy is someone that it's it's frustrating because he has these opportunities to get more playing time, but no matter what it is, whether it's like a cut or injury to his hand or his injury to like an ankle or anything of the sort, it's like you want to be able to see him get this playing time now because he's another guy where playing time is going to be a lot harder to come by once you add in 3 players that are going to be playing 20 plus minutes a night. So I think that's the only nitpicking that we could really do. But we're starting to see a Pacers team take baby steps forward. No one can say that they're back yet, but you have another winnable game against Portland coming up at home. You have the next night off. It's good to not do any more back-to-backs for now, but this is another opportunity for Indiana to inch forward. How are you feeling about this team keeping their foot on the gas against a Portland team that, quite frankly, is not good?
I'll just say this. I think that they're in a better headspace now because Tyrese is in a better headspace. And I think that it all starts with Tyrese and it trickles down from there because when he's happy,
Yes.
that joy kind of spills over into the rest of the team, right? And I don't know if he's like fully got his joy back. It's only been a couple of game sample
Getting
size here
there.
where he's played better, but he's been a much better headspace. Like one thing, like he talked about in the post game presser, which I encourage you guys, like I said, to go back and listen. But he said people were sending me clips of how I looked with my facial expressions and things like that. He's like, I looked, just completely out of it and kind of
Yeah.
like, woe is
Yeah.
me. And he basically said, look, that's not going to happen anymore. So I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago. I said he's 24 years old, okay? And there's so much pressure on him. And Turner said sometimes when you ask for everything, you get everything, but that's also the good and the bad. And that's a veteran speaking right there that's been here for 10 years who have seen guys that want everything, get everything, and not know how to handle it. And we don't have to name names. I think people can figure that one out. But Halliburton's got a great head on his shoulders. He mentioned that multiple times, how his family, friends, people in his corner have really been encouraging him. And so I think that they're in a better spot to just grow from this and learn from this with Halliburton because he's going through it and he's in a good spot now mentally, which was the biggest thing that we talked about takeaway wise with what is going on with Halliburton. And we were critical of him, but we know that he has this potential to be special. And I think that's what we've been hoping for, right? Is to see that specialness once again, because he even said it. If I play better in a couple of these games we've lost, those are wins. And it sucks when you're 6-10. So I think they're in a good spot. And I do think that the Portland game, there's going to be some tough matchups there, but it's one game at a time. You can't look ahead to Detroit. You got to focus on Portland. You got a day off to kind of get yourself a little bit more rest. You've won 2 in a row. Build off that momentum. I think they should, and I think they will beat Portland. But I do think that you can't overlook this team because the Pacers still are down a lot of guys, and you're relying on the Quinton Jacksons, Jarus Walkers of the world to play good. And if they don't, how do you fill those voids there with different players and different roles with being so limited with your options?
Looking into Portland right now, they're 7-11, which for their standards is actually pretty decent. I think this is a Portland team that didn't have anything to play for coming in this year. They got bigs that you should definitely be worried about. I mean, you got your 8 and you got your Robert Williams, you got Donovan Clingan. I think that those could definitely provide some matchup problems for Indiana. But the one thing that does very much encourage me, this is the fifth and final game of a road trip that Portland's on. And typically, you kind of get a team that's ready to go home on that last leg of the road trip. And I think that that's something that definitely works in Indiana's favor as they've been, like we talk about sleeping in your own bed. You've been home for a while now, couple days. And I think that that makes a big difference. If Indiana can handle business against Portland, things would be, I think the vibe would be a little bit better around the fan base. No one's ready to just hand them anything. But when you're talking about Tyrese before, guys, there's going to be some down games. There are. Like it's not like a light switch that you just flip it. Hey everyone, Tyrese is back. It's this is who he was at the end of 2023. It's like no, look, there's going to be the good. There might be a little bit of bad. There's going to be the good again. It's like let's continue to uplift this guy because the stretch that he was going through before, yeah, look, it was awful. I feel like he's climbing out of it. Let's give him some grace. It might not be if he has a bad game against Portland and we win. We heard it firsthand from Tyrese after the game. I don't care what my stats are if this team wins. If we win, who cares? If we lose, like tonight was one of those nights where if we lost to New Orleans, I would have felt bad for Tyrese because I feel like this type of performance could have been kind of a little bit brushed under the rug of like Indiana loses another one. What's going on with the Pacers? Instead, it's like, hey, we win this game as a big result of Tyrese uplifting this team. And I think right now, hey, let's just continue to uplift these players. Let's see what we can do. If we can get back to 500 after these next 2 games, Alex, anything can happen.
I mean, yeah, it's a long season, right? And that's kind of like he said it. The dog days of the NBA schedule are right now. So
Yeah.
it's not fun. I know a lot of people are still really heavily invested in football, both
hmm
college and NFL. So it's not like a lot of people are as glued in to this team like they were last year because this was the in-season tournament team. People were really excited about that. It was new, it was fresh, the courts were new. Like everybody was buzzing about the Pacers and they were playing better. And now it's just been like a lot of injuries, not been playing good in the NBA Cup. And so it's like, okay, well, what do I have to look forward to right now? So I think that that's a lot to do with it. The interest is just not as high as it once was. But, I still think that they have a great team that they've assembled here that can really compete in the playoffs. And I think that once they get everybody healthy, like you said, and figure this stuff out, it'll be fine. But as we wrap things up here, I know we got to get going here. We do need to give out our player awards. So start things off first. We'll work our way up to the MVP. Let's start with the Feisty Foster Hustle Player of the Game. Where do you want to go?
I mean, I feel like Quinton Jackson's a guy that could honestly make an argument every single game. I think, like I mentioned before, I think that that span of him drawing an offensive foul and then hitting a three on the other end, I thought that was very feisty. I'm more than happy giving it to Quinton Jackson, unless you say otherwise.
Yeah, and that is probably my default answer for this. If I'm trying to push back a little bit, the only other person I would consider is probably Myles Turner.
Yeah. We can give it a Turner because feisty is being able to play through, so some being banged up, and I feel like we saw Turner at times be aggressive calling for the ball. We saw him get some good rebounds. Like I think Turner is deserving of some flowers in this type of performance. I think Quentin Jackson's won a few of them, so let's switch it over to Turner.
Yeah, good on the glass, right? Was
Yep.
was feisty out there in terms of showing some raw emotions with guys not covering for him and things like that. So it's close, right? But I feel like Quinton Jackson has probably got more than we ever expected. So we'll give Myles the nod tonight. And then, of course, for your Reggie Miller clutch player of the game, is there really a question on this one?
I think you got to go Tyrese Haliburton. I think that Haliburton, the way he was hitting shots down the stretch, I mean, big assist down the stretch, just huge stuff. And that man's been clutch all year. Say what you want about his struggles. That man has been clutch for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, 10 points in the fourth quarter. He had 3 assists, the big one to Mathurin, like we talked about. And let's not forget the steal that he had, too, in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
That was big.
Mm-hmm.
So he was clutch tonight. He really kind of helped put this team on his back because, hey, if you look at the first and second quarters and even some of the third, I mean, the third was not as bad point-wise, but, like, the Pacers closed the quarters poorly, and he was able to kind of keep them from having another poor close in the clutch. And even, like you said, even through the struggles this year, he's been good in the clutch. So
Yes.
it's good to see him kind of just be able to lift himself up even when he's struggling. But for the MVP of the game, I think this one's pretty obvious as well. You got to go Jarus Walker, right?
Yeah, right. No, never that. I would love
Sorry.
to. I'd love to have that day where we do go. Hey, Jarus Walker is
We
the
did,
MVP, but
right? Against the Magic?
sure, yes. It
He's
feels
already
like
had it.
look, Tyrese Haliburton is deserving of this by far. This was just awesome to see. And it started early. It really did. He had 9 points in that first quarter, and it made like we've talked about how Tyrese has not gotten off to a good start in the majority of games this year. He was good throughout this game. 9 3-pointers. The crazy thing is to say that's not even a career high, but the 9 threes tonight. There's 23 shots, and 18 of them came from three, which is crazy. It's a lot of threes, but you make 9 of them, nobody cares. It was great to see him continue to shoot, and he knew when he had it, and he was absolutely in the zone tonight.
Yeah, I mean, 9 in the first quarter. He only had 5 in the second, but 10 in the third and 10 in the fourth. So that's incredibly balanced. It's what you want. He kind of took over the game at certain times, and it changed the way that teams were guarding him. And so then he was spraying it out for assists and finding guys. Like I know he had a great pass to Obi Toppin one time where he got the dunk down low and had some nice passes to Quinton Jackson for 3. So it's just like, you know what? Like, he played basketball the right way. He deserves the Mel Daniels MVP of the game and the Reggie Miller clutch player of the game. So Halliburton's is racking up all the awards tonight, and then Myles Turner will get our Feisty Foster Award. Let us know in the comment section if you disagree with how we gave these awards out. Let us know what you guys think because we're always interested to hear what you have to say. But other than that, great win, Facci. We've talked about it at nauseum. It's a good win. Come back on Wednesday against Portland. Facci will not be here to recap that game, but I do have a guest lined up for that one, so that'll be a good one to stay tuned for. I'm not going to tell you the guest yet. I'm going to keep it a little bit of a secret. So somebody a little bit random. So they've been on this podcast before, but it's been a minute. So they'll be back to recap the game, and I think it'll be a lot of energy. That's all I'm going to say, a lot of energy. So Facci, we'll be back, though, tomorrow. Another episode coming out for you guys, and I'm excited to talk about Pacers basketball with you again without doing a game recap. So anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Nope, just feels good to get a little bit of momentum. A winning streak never hurt no one, and I'm not ready for this ride to end yet. So let's see how far we can run it. 2 down. Let's see if we can go for a third.
All right, everybody. If you're looking forward to seeing the Pacers hopefully add a third win to their winning streak against the Portland Trailblazers on Wednesday, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!